Wellness shares her remarkable story of triumph over adversity. Diagnosed at 17 with diabetes, Tracy defied the odds, dedicating 47 years to researching strategy for a longer, healthier life. At 60, she's been more energetic than ever, exemplified by a solo 3,527-mile bicycle ride. I'm going to say that again. 3,527-mile bicycle ride from San Francisco to New York City. Tracy's mission is clear: to offer hope and practical strategies for fulfilling life. Join us as Tracy imparts courage and tools to live longer, healthier, regardless of age or setbacks. All right, let's bring her on. Hello, hello.
Hey, Michelle. Glad to be here today.
I'm so glad to have you on. You are my hero. Like I know that I told you that right before we came on, because that is such a defeat of itself, writing for that long. And when I read your book, and we're going to get into your book, you had dogs chasing you, you had weather conditions, you had to carry your bike, you had flat tires. I mean, just everything. And then you got injured. And on to top it all is you had to check your blood sugar each day. So you had all of this going for you. But why don't you go ahead and tell us first, before this wonderful bicycle goal that you had in mind, tell us your story first. How did your journey begin?
Well, like it showed in your video, at 17 years old, a doctor walks into ICU. I was in ICU. I was in very, very, very poor health. I mean, I was critically ill. And the doctor walks in and he puts his hands on his hips and he says, "Young lady, you've got juvenile diabetes. You're going to be dead in 20 years. You're going to die with horrible complications. You're never going to be able to have any children." And as he turned around and walked away, he said, "Oh, and by the way, you have to take shots several times a day for the rest of your life because there isn't a cure." And he walked out of the hospital ICU room and went on. And I laid there, again, at 17, I'm thinking, did I hear him right? What did he say? What did he say? And so I kept hearing, I was in the hospital for probably about a week and a half or 2 weeks because I had to learn to give myself shots and learn to eat what I could and mostly what I couldn't eat. And everybody kept telling me the same thing. You're going to be dead in 20 years. You're going to have horrible complications. You're never going to have children. You're going to have your legs amputated. You're going to be on dialysis. You're going to go blind. I mean, not one person gave me hope. Nobody. And I got out of a hospital and I started doing a little bit of research at a local medical school library because I thought, surely there's something I can do. I mean, sure, I was a senior in high school. I mean, I had all these big plans for my life. And I started reading a little bit about things that were working around the world, not so much in the United States, but around the world. And I thought, interesting. So as my first outing out with my friends, we were going to go to a movie and we were going to go see Animal House. That's how long ago it's been. But my mom was yelling at the door. You know, when I'm running out the door, she's yelling at me saying, "Tracy, remember, you can't eat anything." And I said, yeah, I know. And she didn't say it to be mean or we couldn't afford it because that was not the case. But she knew what I couldn't and could have. And I also was learning discipline because you can't just have what everybody else eats when you are diagnosed in the mid 70s. And so what was interesting was I went to the concession stand with all my friends. They were getting their popcorn, their Cokes, their candy, all that stuff. And I went to the concession stand clerk just to get a small cup so I could fill up a water in the drinking fountain because nobody wants to be different. Nobody. And I would have been the outsider if I didn't have anything. And the concession stand clerk looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, "Oh, I'll be glad to pay for the cup." And she said, "No." And I ran out of the movie theater and I'm screaming and I'm crying, "Why me? Why me?" And I'm driving home. You know, my life is over. Everybody's telling me the same thing. And I ran upstairs and went to bed. And as I'm laying in bed, I said, "Tracy, you've got two choices. You can be better or you can be bitter. What are you going to choose?" And at that moment, my life changed. And I said, "I'm going to be better." So then I really got my researcher's hat on. And I started researching everything I could in the medical school library. Because we didn't have the internet back then. Like the movie theater, I didn't have a choice of Diet Cokes or Diet soft drinks or water. It's just because we didn't have any of that bottled water stuff back in the 70s. And so everything I started researching, I started trying it out in my life. And I started seeing, okay, this is possible. This is possible. And then I was able to have two children, which that was a big exciting moment in my life. I always wanted to be a mom, but everybody kept saying you can't, you can't. And I kept thinking, yes I can, yes I can. And so I had both of my children and things were going great. And about my mid 30s, I started really feeling horrible. That's why I say I have more energy in my 60s than I did in my 30s because I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? So I went back and started researching more. And I started realizing, Tracy, you're not doing what you should be doing. Don't listen to what everybody else is saying and doing, and start doing what is working. And everybody's different. Michelle, your body's different than my body. And what works for me doesn't work for you. And so I started changing. First thing I did was change my breakfast in the morning. I was eating the typical American breakfast that was approved by all the diabetes experts. And I changed and started eating salads and like leftover protein and some healthy fat. And within a couple of days, I started feeling better. And I thought, okay, is this a connection? And then the more researching I did, I realized that when you eat something that's got a lot of sugar, like carbohydrates, I mean, you think of a bagel. Bagels have a lot of sugar in them when it's released in your body. And my blood sugars would spike and then it would crash. And I thought, okay. And then I started realizing that, okay, every time I crash is when I feel so tired. Then I started researching more and more and realizing even everybody, I mean, people with or without diabetes, they had the same exact problem. Your blood sugar spikes and then you crash and then you're hungry or you're tired. Think about the last time you had pizza or the last time you had Italian at restaurant, for lunch in the afternoon, you're reaching for something to try to pick up, give you more energy. Instead of drinking water, most of us, or not me, but most people reach for a candy bar or a soft drink. But when you realize that when you stop eating those foods that spike your blood sugar all the time and start doing it like this, you start thinking, wow, I have more energy. And so then I started changing all of my meal plans. And then I started feeling more and more energetic. And so towards my end of my 30s, I started thinking, wait a minute, Tracy, I should be dead now. So maybe these doctors weren't all right. And so I started celebrating every decade after I reached my 20 years to do something because I'm like, hey, I'm still alive. I'm thriving because the opposite happens with so many people when you have a diagnosis, any kind of diagnosis, or just aging alone, you start being more and more tired. You have more aches and pains. And I was doing just the opposite. I was reversing instead of getting worse. And my doctor kept saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? So I started telling him some of the stuff because I'd had the same endocrinologist, which is a doctor who treats people with diabetes. And he started saying, I didn't know this. Doctors learn a lot of stuff in medical school, which is obviously important to save our lives, but I was living it day to day and doing the research. And he was the one that first instilled me to write my first book. And I started thinking about, okay, why am I doing so well? And it boils down to my 3M formula. And this is so important. Anybody, this is the most important thing you're going to hear today from me is the 3M formula because that changes everything. And the first M is mind. You have to have the right mindset. At 17 years old, when I was laying in my bed crying, I had the decision. Two choices, Tracy, bitter or better. What are you going to choose? And then mouth. We have to learn to eat to live. Don't live to eat and find things that work for you. Some things don't work for me. Again, Michelle, that works for you.
Oh,
Same
wow.
with my family. Things that work for me doesn't work for them and vice versa. And then move. We got to get off our chairs and move more. And I've always been an athlete my whole entire life. And then so back to now to what I did every decade after my diagnosis, after I hit my 20 years of living with diabetes, I do something epic because I've always worked out. And so my first 25 years of living with diabetes, I did a 100-mile bike ride. Loved it. Everything was fantastic because I want to celebrate because again, I
Right.
don't want to be bitter. I want to be better. And then as my 30th anniversary of my diagnosis approached, I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And I thought, I'll do a triathlon because I'm afraid of water. Deathly afraid of
Oh,
water. But one of my heroes was Eleanor Roosevelt, and she
mm,
always said, "Do something every day that scares you, frightens you." Everybody quotes that differently, but I use scares me every day. And so I thought, I'm going to do a triathlon. My whole family was like, "You're doing what?" I'm like, "I'm going to do a triathlon." Well, then as my 40th anniversary of my diagnosis approached, that's when I thought, okay, Tracy, we really are doing something right here. What are we going to do? And that's when I decided to ride my bicycle from Golden Gate Bridge
oh,
in San
wow.
Francisco and ending at the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City and actually on the Dr. Oz show. And that was the most incredible experience of my life of riding my bicycle and meeting people all around the country. Just so many wonderful things happened along that ride. I mean, I can
Yeah.
go on and on, but one thing I'd like to share, going back to
Yeah.
my 3M formula, when I was in
Right.
Sacramento, I was waiting for the light to turn green, and I just kind of at the corner of my eye, just kind of looked at a lady at the bus stop, and I just felt, you get that gut feeling, and I thought,
Mhm.
I need to get off my bike and go talk to her. And she was the sweetest lady. She's probably in her mid 30s, but morbidly obese. And she started telling me that she couldn't even walk a few houses down, half a block to go home because it was too far for her to walk. So she was waiting for her brother to pick her up. So I started thinking, what can we do? What can we do, Tracy? What can we do? I'm a health coach. Tracy, you can do this. So everything I started saying, can you do this? She'd say, I can't. And I'm like, okay, Tracy, keep going. So then I said, can you walk to your into your driveway? And just like that, the light bulb, I shed the lights. So I think I can. I think I can. And so that's all I needed. And I said, walk you into your driveway, rest just for a few minutes, and then walk back. And then extend it every day, go a little bit further every day. And as I was riding into New York City, just there close to it, I got a
Yeah.
text message from her. And she said, I want to let you know I just signed up for my first 5K walk. That's
Wow.
3.1 miles. This is the lady that couldn't even walk a couple of houses away to go to her house from the bus stop. And she said,
Wow.
Tracy, I didn't even realize that I would start having more energy just by walking. And she said, I really hadn't changed my diet that much, but I started walking every day and the pounds are coming off. She says, I'm a totally
Yeah.
different person. And then she sent me a picture and I thought, wow, I would never have recognized her. So,
Yeah.
it's part of the mind, mouth, and move. Just do something every day. And that's why I told her, find things you like and then do it. And she said, well, I don't want to ride a bike. I said, don't ride a bike, find activities you enjoy. And that's one little step every day she did. And she got so much healthier. And just like my bicycle ride, if I would have left San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, thinking, I got
Mhm.
3,527 miles to go, I'd have been overwhelmed. We all would have. But
Mhm.
what did I do? I said, I'm going for a bike ride, just like we did as kids. We all used to just go out and have fun. So every day I'd say, I'm going for a bike ride. And that's what I did. Next thing I knew, every day I was 1 inch closer, 1 inch closer.
Oh my gosh, and you know what? Yeah, that's what I admire so much is because not only did you enjoy that, but like you said, your
Mhm.
mind was ready to do it, and that's I mean, because a lot of people are in good shape, but they don't ride across the country. Now, with
Mhm.
all
Mhm.
of your knowledge that you have learned, I mean, up to this time, if you
Mhm.
were able to go back and talk to that, I mean, very wise 17-year-old, what would you say to her now?
Don't lose hope you can do it because
So yeah,
nobody gave me hope. And everybody
yeah,
wants to blame
that's
the
great.
doctor. People that hear my story all the time, they say, oh, he has horrible bedside manners. I actually think because of that and all the people in the hospital, the medical staff, the nurses, the technicians, everybody saying the same thing, I think that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I did take it very seriously. And
Right,
I still do
right,
today, even though
right.
technology has made it a little bit easier to eat certain foods. But
Mhm.
I stick with kind of the same thing I learned in the mid 70s. No, Tracy, we're going to stick with the plan. Let's keep going with what we're doing because it's working. And that's the thing is don't lose hope because just like my ride across the country, so many people I met have lost hope. And if it's okay, I'd like to share this story. But I met, and I did a lot of social media when I was on my ride because my ride was to celebrate for me, but it was also to provide hope for people and to get the word out about, hey, you can do it no matter what you're struggling with. But I met a mom who sent me a text message or a social media little message saying, I've been watching you the last few days, and my daughter, who's 6 years old, has type 1 diabetes also. And she said, she's lost hope. She's had it for 2 years. She's had it since she was 4, and she's lost hope. And I thought, oh, no, 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 no. So the mom took the little girl out and they bought a map of the United States and then cut out a picture of a bicycle and then put my head on top of that bicycle. And every day that little girl would inch it along and along and along. And then she started feeling better because I did a lot of I've done a lot of speaking over the years, but I really started really reaching out to talking to kids and to people that are struggling with diagnosis and bad mentality, thinking, oh, I'm old, I'm stinking thinking, that kind of stuff. But I kept telling all these kids, if this old lady can do it, imagine what you can do. And so people thought, do you think you're old? I'm like, no, no, I'm riding my bike across the country. My husband and I just went backpacking to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I mean, just like 5 months ago. So I mean, it's not like I think I'm old, but I keep trying to tell people, I'm my 60s. If I can do this, what are you saying you can't do? And that's kind of been my mission, and it still is today. Is provide hope for people, and it's not just about people with diabetes, although I know that really well. But when you start thinking about heart disease, you start thinking about cancer, Alzheimer's, they're all related to pretty much a bad diet. And not all of them, but I mean, so much of it is. So if you start changing your meal plans, start eating healthier, having the right mindset, and start doing things like that, and then moving more, your body gets better. And then maybe holistically, your body can get well, and you never have a horrible diagnosis. Mhm. 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 Actually, my first book was Diabetes Tragedy Triumph, if that matters. But my second book was Ride for Hope, but that's okay. I just want to clarify that in case people are like, no, 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 that's not right. But anyway, but Ride for Hope, I wrote that book 2 or 3 times because I just couldn't get, I kept thinking, this isn't right. This isn't right. I just don't feel it. You have to feel things to really, I kept thinking, this isn't right. And then one day I just started looking, I took old recipe cards or index cards and put them in a recipe book or a box. And I just started writing every day what I did. And I just started looking at that and I thought, wow, that was that day. I remember that day. That's why I decided to do it day by day. And people were like, oh, so much better. Because I sent it to quite a few people, and people were like, oh, this hands down is a way to go. Because then you can see the real thing. And it's a fun, easy read. You don't have to read it all in one setting. You can read it day by day or week by week. And so I really wanted to get mostly for my grandkids, because at that time I did my ride. I only had 4 grandkids. Now I've got 6 grandkids, but I really wanted to make this something where the grandkids could see, wow, I didn't know Mimi did those kind of things. I didn't know she had that in her. I mean, even though the older grandkids know, hey, if Mimi's involved, we're going to be active. They all say that. They all know we're going to do something active. But I really did it mostly for them. But then also, I never wanted to forget that experience, because that experience changed my life. I've had a lot of life changing moments in my life, but that one was really, leaving the Golden Gate Bridge was just epic. And then every day when it was struggles and hard and more struggles and meeting interesting people, I kept my eyes on the prize. I kept my eyes on the prize, and the prize was New York City, because I thought, people are waiting for me to get there. They need me to get there because they don't have hope. And so it was more of a teamwork effort, just like my ride was. People were encouraging me when I needed it. People were honking the horns when I was going up these huge mountains. And what was funny is, I'm a Texan. we don't have mountains, at least in the Dallas Fort Worth area where I live. We don't have any mountains. And so within like the first day and a half or 2 days, I'm climbing up my first set of mountains. And it was hard, but so many people along the way encouraged me. And just like my book, we have to have encouragement. We have to hang around people that push us to do our best. And so that's kind of what I did with the Ride for Hope. And it was it was a gift of love for my grandkids. But
Oh, yeah.
I think even more importantly than that, it was a gift to me saying, look at what you've done in your life already, and you're still going.
And what's amazing is you were able to take pictures
Mhm,
the whole
mhm,
entire time, and which
mhm,
really, I love that you include it in your book, and, beyond and we'll come back to the books as well, but I also wanna show, of as much, social media and talking and everything along this ride, and I'm going, "How did she have the energy to get on stage and talk to everybody?" Especially Dr. Oz. I mean, that is just amazing in itself.
that and everybody asks the question, is he as nice in person as he is on TV? He's even nicer in person. He was the
Really?
most it was unbelievable experience. Have And then
Wow.
he had me backstage doing some promos for him, and he and I sat back there and talked after we were done shooting all the promos. He's
Yeah.
like, "Wow, wow, wow! You're saying everything you're saying is so right." So anyway, he's just wonderful. And I got a phone call from the producer when I was in Chicago. I was meeting with a group of endocrinologists, and I got the phone call, and I was like, so anyway, that was a highlight. But actually, it wasn't, because everywhere I went on the TV,
Yeah.
I'm still friends today with some of these TV producers, and I knew several of the TV producers before I left on the ride, because when my first book came out, they asked me to come to their studios to do in studio interviews,
Yeah.
my Diabetes Tragedy Triumph. And
Right.
so I had two or three, I can't remember, two or three pre-booked TV interviews before I left on the ride. But then the rest of it, mostly it was my husband that would make the phone calls. He would send the information to him. So he did probably 95% of that. And then we also did press releases, and one of my daughters helped with that as well. So anyway, it was a teamwork.
Oh,
I
yeah.
say that with life. And if you don't have people on your team, or whatever you want to call it, your community, you're going to fail. And so I couldn't have done it all by myself. I could not have.
Oh,
But
yeah.
because I had people with me, or people supporting me, people saying, okay, you need to do this tomorrow. And then I did a Facebook post every morning and every evening, Facebook Live, just to kind of tell people what my plans were for the day. Hopefully I was going to get there and do that, or whatever I was hoping to accomplish. But then at the end, it was always funny, because I'd always say, okay, I did this, I totally got lost. But one day I got a text message from my daughter, and you'll appreciate this, because before I left, my kids wanted me to sign a contract with them that if anything happened with my diabetes, or it became too much, I needed to stop, because they
Right.
wanted their mom and their kids, Mimi, around.
Yeah.
And so one day I got a call from my daughter as soon as I got done with my Facebook Live, and she said, "Mom, you don't look well." And I'm like, "It's funny that you mentioned it. I think I got food poisoning, but I'm going
Oh.
to be finished. I'm going as soon as we get done hanging up, I'm going to relax and rest." And
Mhm.
and so, I would get people texting me, calling me, just saying, "Hey, I love what you're doing," or "I'm praying for you," or "You've got this, you can do it. Don't get discouraged." And people, like I said, people along the highway, people along the country roads, stopping, giving me water. And one sweet lady in Nebraska who's a construction worker, she was stopping traffic, and I was the first person in our line to get to go. And she said, "I'm going to let you go for like a minute or two before the cars go, to get you around the construction." And then so we were talking a few minutes, and I was telling her what I was doing. And she's like, "That's incredible." She reached into her cooler, and I looked in there. This was her last bottled water. And she
Mm.
gave it to me. And I said, "No, you need it." And she said, "No, sweetie, you need it more than I do." And I thought, wow, that's again, we need teamwork. And that's what inspired me to write the book, was because so many kids were following the ride, and so many parents of the kids. Because unfortunately, so many of these parents, when they get a horrible diagnosis like type 1 diabetes, which is what I have, they called it juvenile diabetes back in the day, but they're all saying the same thing. They're like, our kids are not getting given a life, a death sentence. They're not going to be able to live very long, and they're not going to be healthy. And
Yeah.
so, when you have that kind of situations going on, you don't want to fail. And so they were on my team too. And anyway, it was an incredible experience. I could go on and on, like you were mentioning, carrying my bicycle over my
Oh my
shoulders.
gosh.
I got lost again the whole entire time. I
Right.
don't. I'm directionally challenged anyway. I mean, it's ridiculous. But I was leaving Trunky, California, and I was heading for Reno, Nevada. It was only supposed to be 3 hours, and I got off some wild, crazy tangent. And then the next
Yeah.
thing I knew, there's a mountain in front of me. So I thought, okay, I'm not going back. So I just knew my gut was telling me it's probably the right way,
Yeah.
even though several, small little town behind me, a lady said, "Be careful, the bears are real active today." I thought, well, I did have bear spray, but I'm
Yeah.
carrying my bicycle over huge boulders. I mean, carrying it, and I'm almost out of water. I mean, I have a smidgen amount of water, and now I'm conserving water. And I'm virtually out of all my food. And when you have diabetes, you really need food to bring your blood sugar up. Because I was
Right.
still taking insulin every day because you have to have insulin. Because without insulin, I die. And then I was almost out of, I didn't have cell service, but my phone was almost dead. I mean, it was like a perfect storm of things not to do when you're riding your bicycle across the country. And then I got to the top and I realized, okay, I called my husband. I said, I'm totally lost. Well, because of cell phones, you can kind of figure out where people
Oh,
are, And
yeah.
he said, I think go down that hill and then I think you'll be okay. And then I think you'll get back on, GPS will start working again. And I did, but the same big boulders, I'm falling down the mountain carrying my bicycle. But you
Wow.
know what? I was scared a little bit, but nothing like turning around or I'm giving up or anything. Because I thought, okay, this will be a fun story for my oldest grandson because he loves crazy things that Mimi does. I mean, he's an awful lot like I am. Probably going to be an adventurer around the world too when he grows up. But
Right. Right. Following your footsteps.
yes,
So the next book is Diabetes, Tragedy
uh-huh.
to Triumph. And like you said,
Yes,
this is the first one that you wrote. So
yes, yes.
tell us the inspiration behind that.
But that's the one my doctor actually recommended me write because he said
Oh,
this doctors have always had me come in and talk to their patients. I mean, they have small settings. I mean, they've been doing that since man, oh man, I was probably in my mid 20s, just what I was doing and what I was learning. Because my doctor and all the doctors that my doctor knew were all hearing my research. I mean, I don't do anything without research, and it's got to be peer reviewed research. I don't just, believe
right,
in snake oil salespeople. So I started
right,
going and talking to people, and my doctor kept saying, Tracy, you've got to get this written. You've got to get this written because this could save people's lives. Well, funny thing is, when I was growing up, I had dyslexia, which we didn't know what it was back then. Now we know what it was, but I had to teach myself differently how to read and write. And I didn't think it was possible for me to write. But then the more I started really pouring my heart into it, I really started realizing, again, that's where I came up with the 3M formula. Now, when
right.
people ask me, because I still get doctors asking me, what are you doing and how are you still alive? And I always say, goes back to my 3M formula, mind, mouth, and move. I mean, they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, no, 3M's because they all have to work together. Because
Right.
if you don't have the right mindset, you're probably not going to eat healthy. If you eat bad food, you're probably not going to want to exercise. You don't want to exercise, you're going to eat bad food. So it's all works synergistically together. And
Mhm.
that was my first book, and I didn't think I could do it. That was a tough one for me because I kept thinking,
Yeah.
I'm not very smart. I'm not an author. I was a kid that couldn't read and write in school. But that changed that book, and that book
Yeah.
really got me really propelled into even doing more research.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, then the last one, okay, longevity coats.
Yes. And this was very interesting because I co-authored it with my husband. And if you've ever done any kind of projects with somebody you dearly love, it could be make or break it. We had some arguments, needless to say. But what's interesting is, I spent so many of my years only focused on diabetes. And with diabetes, you also have to focus on your heart because people with diabetes oftentimes have heart issues. And then people also have limbs amputated. I was guaranteed to have that happen. Eyesight goes for so many people. And so when you start looking at the whole body holistically and start seeing different things, I started really thinking, Tracy, you're getting older. I wrote that in my early 60s, my late 50s. I can't remember when I wrote it or when we wrote it. And I started looking into more, okay, how can you live a longer, healthier life? And that's when I started really putting, so it's less focused on diabetes, although there is mentions of diabetes in there, but a lot of blood sugar, because blood sugar problems affect everybody. And keeping your blood sugars, like I said, in range really helps you live longer. And so
Oh,
that book has really got a lot of research in it. The Diabetes Tragedy of Triumph also does, but this book has the research documented in the book so people can go back and look, because so many people throughout my career have said, oh, would you send me this research? Sure. Then I have to find it. So I thought, I'm just going to put that into the book itself. And that was a huge success too, because again, I speak, I know what I'm talking about, obviously, because I'm alive, but I speak because it's important, but I use layman's terms. And that's what's so much fun. When I spoke at Harvard a few years ago, I got off the stage and several doctors came up to me and said, what are you doing? How are you still alive?
it's never too late to
Yep.
do something, to plan anything. It's never too late because everybody uses that excuse. Well, I'm
Yes.
50 something. It's too late for me to start. No,
Nope. Nope. Not at
you
all.
made
Not
a
at all.
wonderful point. Are you ready for the last question?
Yes.
All right, let's bring on the wheel. And we'll be able to see it whenever it chooses, whatever you get to answer. And I call this the inspiration wheel.
Good.
Oh, interesting. You never know where it's going to land. Okay. So, you know how everybody has favorite numbers.
Uh-huh.
So, what is your favorite number and why?
Okay. The whole world is going to laugh at this, but number 8. And
Oh,
the reason why I like number 8 is I'm a huge Troy Aikman fan, who was a Dallas Cowboy football player back in the 80s and late 80s. Well, mostly in the 90s, but I think we recruited him in the 80s, or we drafted him in the 80s, late 80s. Anyway, I've been a big fan of Troy Aikman, and so 8's always been my number since he became a Dallas Cowboy. That was
yeah.
decades ago, and that's just a number that's always stuck with me.
So, you must be a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Yes, I am, in the good times and the bad. Yes.
You
Since they've
stick
been
it through.
around, since the conception, I've been a big Cowboy fan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
very good, very good. And that's yeah, and that's a good thing since you live here in Texas. So
Yes, yes.
I think it's wonderful. Well, thank you, Tracy, so much for coming on. Where can people reach you? What's your favorite social media?
Well, I do Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I do post on all of them. I get messages from all of them. So I guess there's really no favorite. But the best place to find me also is my website, because I have lots of free resources. Because my mission in life is to help everybody live a longer, healthier, happier life, despite age or setbacks. And so TracyHerbert.com, that's TracyHerbert.com, is the best place to find. And there's links to my social media. You can sign up for free weekly emails, just fun, simple tips that can help you change your life or save
I
your life
love
even better.
yes, absolutely. And everybody loves freebies. We love
Yes, yes.
freebies.
And there's a
All
lot of
right.
good freebies on there.
And well, good, 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 good. So I'm going to leave everybody with this. And I actually found this. I might have to get my glasses on. I found this on in Tracy's book. Okay. And it was at the very end. And it says, and this quote from her book: dream big, keep having hope, encourage everyone to do the same. You can do this. I guarantee it. Don't lose hope, Tracy. So thank you again, Tracy, and I will see everybody next week.